Here are 3 true scary stories from Reddit. The links to the stories are in the description below. Enjoy. Number 1. When I was 7, I lived in a very urban area along with my family and our dog, a husky border collie mix named Missy. Our neighborhood was pretty safe for the most part, until that is, a few months before we moved out. Most people's homes had a front door, a side door, and a back door. On this one particular night, we heard a knock on the side door. It was 9 p.m. and almost pitch black outside, and I wondered, who would be knocking at such a late hour? That's when I saw my mom walk over and answer the door without even asking who it was. I couldn't believe she didn't know how incredibly stupid her actions were. It was dark, late, and they came to the side door, not the front. She opened the door and there stood 2 guys who I figured were in their late teens to early 20s. My mom had only opened the main door and not the screen door behind it. Missy immediately began growling at them. She never really barked or growled unless something was wrong. The 2 men claimed they were selling tires, and the more they talked, the more suspicious my mom got. Who would be selling tires at this time of night? She went to shut the door, but the 2 men pushed their way through the screen door, and that's when Missy attacked. The 2 guys took off running and Missy began chasing them, but my mom quickly grabbed her by her collar before she got too far. My dad had also heard the commotion and came running out of his room and gave chase. The 2 men ran across the street and climbed a 10-foot high fence behind a row of houses that led to some apartments from the main road. We called the police as soon as my dad got back in the house. I don't remember if they've ever caught them or not. I do honestly believe that if we didn't have a dog, they'd have broken into our house and would have done God knows what to us. Our friend and protector Missy passed away several years ago, and I can't thank her enough for what she did for me and my family. She was protective of us when my siblings and I were babies. Hell, that dog thought we were her puppies. But to the 2 creepy would-be robbers, let's not meet again. Number 2. This incident took place several years ago. I'm a short, petite woman and was in my mid-20s. I lived alone in a small neighborhood of townhomes with my dog Blake. My job of hosting different events throughout the community kept me out of the office for most of the day, so it was pretty normal for me to stop by the house midday and let the dog out. Blake was a Vizsla, but was tall and large for his breed, about as tall as a lab and all muscle. He was calm and well behaved, except when people would knock at the door. He'd repeatedly jump and bark, and his bark was very intimidating. On one hot summer day, I had come home in the afternoon to let Blake out and to grab a bite to eat. The parking spaces were empty, and it looked as if I was the only person home in the entire neighborhood, with the exception of a man who looked in his 40s sitting in a termite spraying truck. He gave me a very creepy vibe as I noticed him watch me as I walked into my place. Not 5 minutes later, there came a knock at the door. I hesitated, but then decided to answer, and it was the termite guy. Normally, I'd hold Blake back and have him calm down, but this time I let Blake jump and bark all over the screen door. The man was obviously surprised and looked at Blake for an uncomfortably long time before speaking. He asked if he could borrow a screwdriver. This seemed an odd request because A, why would he need one if he's just spraying the outside of the townhomes for termites? And B, this seems like a tool you'd have in your company work truck, especially if it was something you needed for your job. I should have just said no and shut the door, but I told him if he'd walk away, I would set one on the front porch. Otherwise, if I opened the door, my dog would attack. He finally turned around and walked off. But not to be rude, I still tossed the screwdriver onto the porch, but he never came back to use it. I still wonder what might have happened if I hadn't had Blake there with me. So, to the creepy termite guy, let's not meet. Number 3. This happened when I was 10. I had a golden retriever, husky mix named Coda, who was just around 6 months old. Every day after school let out, I would run the whole way home just so I could get in some playtime with him before I started my homework. On this one particular day, my mom was driving me to badminton class, but first she had to make a quick stop at the post office to pick up a package for her boss. She parked the car and went inside, and I remained in the back seat with Coda. It was a hot day, so the window was rolled down far enough that I could fit my arm through. It was nice to feel the cool breeze in the car. I was petting and talking to Coda about my friends and whatever else a 10-year-old would be talking about, because doesn't everyone at one point start talking to their pets about life's problems? Suddenly, I saw a hooded man who at the time I thought was homeless. He was dirty and had knotted, unkempt hair. He knocked on the window and asked, "Is your mother here, kid?" I was really nervous but replied, "Yeah." "Then where is she?" This is when Coda began barking and growling, which he never does. I respond, "Well, she'll be back at any moment." The tension in the air was thick, along with a brief moment of silence for like a second or two. Suddenly, he thrusted his arm through the window and had a knife in his hand. I launched myself to the other side of the car while screaming. He's lunging, trying to get his arm in further to stab me. At that moment, Coda leapt up and sank his teeth into his arm. The man yelled out in pain. I could see holes in his jacket, and blood began pouring from it. He immediately pulled out his arm back through the window, but dropped the knife as his hand hit part of the door. I stopped crying for a second and quickly grabbed the knife. Then, for some reason, I remembered how Simba in The Lion King was getting attacked by the hyenas and had attempted to threaten them by roaring. Well, I decided that might not be a bad idea and remembered a swear word I had heard from a 5th grader at school. In the loudest, most threatening voice I could muster, I yelled, "Fuck off!" while pointing the knife at him, making it seem like I was about to throw it. He quickly ran off and I threw the knife out the window. My mom returned and saw the blood on the door. I frantically and incoherently shouted out strung together words of what just happened. In the end, she called the police. I tried to describe the suspect, but all I could manage to say was that he looked homeless. I'm glad my dog Coda was with me that day and saved me from being hurt or killed by that dirty and disheveled man. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.